Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Academy Insider Podcast. In today's episode, I'm joined by a really good friend of mine and a mentor for my time at the Academy, and that's First Sergeant Beth Abbott. Now, I know her a little bit better as Gunny Abbott because when I was a midshipman, she was still a gunnery sergeant in the Marine Corps. She was the brigade drill master, so she was in charge of all things drill. And so when we talk about drill, we're talking about formations, we're talking about parades, we're talking about march on and drill competitions that happen during Plebe Summer. And that's the focus of today's episode. We talk all about drill, what the purpose of drill is, what drill even is at large for anyone who have no idea what I'm talking about when I say drill. We're going to talk about what it is, what the purpose of it is, and how it manifests itself during Plebe Summer. So as you're going through and you're getting ready to prepare for Plebe Summer or what to expect, or your parent just trying to understand what your son or daughter is going through, this is going to be a deep dive into all about military drill during a military indoctrination period. And I think you're really going to get a kick out of it. We share a lot of stories during my time going through my relationship with Beth. And then also on top of that, the relationship we had while I was getting ready to be the regimental commander of Plebe Summer, because there's a lot of drill related things I had to prepare for. So we spent a lot of time together. She had me yelling out at trees and stuff. I don't know what the Marine Corps has got these people doing, but I was out there yelling at trees. And so we share some fun stories in my preparation for being a detailer in Plebe Summer. If you enjoy the episode, please share it with someone who you think may also enjoy it. And then if you could leave a review on Apple Podcasts, rate it, leave a comment, that would be tremendously helpful for me and the Academy Insider mission. So I'd really appreciate it. Thank you so much. If you ever have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, I hope you enjoyed the episode. The Academy Insider Podcast is sponsored by the Vermeer Group, a residential real estate company that serves the United States Naval Academy community and other select clientele in both California and Texas. If I can ever answer a real estate related question for you or connect you with a trusted Academy affiliated agent in the market which you're in, please reach out to me directly at grant@thevermeergroup.com. You can also reach out to me on my LinkedIn page, Grant Vermeer, and I'd be happy to respond to you there. Thank you so much. And now let's get back to the episode. All right. Hey, everyone, and welcome back to the Academy Insider Podcast. Today, I'm joined by First Sergeant Abbott. Beth, it feels weird being a civilian now, so I'm going to call you Beth, even though it feels weird. So I'm sorry about that. But if you don't mind, just telling us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, how you ended up in the Marine Corps, and then how the Marine Corps brought you to the Naval Academy, and then what you did at the Naval Academy.
Yeah, absolutely. First, it feels weird for me to call you Grant because I call you sir. It's so good to see your face. I'm from Blanchard, Michigan. I'm 40 years old. I'm married with 2 kids of my own and a stepson who is a Marine right now on Camp Lejeune. I joined the Marine Corps because my best friend did. I went to college for a year. It wasn't for me. She joined. She came back. I signed up. I was only supposed to do 4 years, and here I am almost 21 years later. It's been an amazing ride, I will tell you that, once in a lifetime. And how I ended up at the Naval Academy, first and foremost, I didn't even know what the Naval Academy was. Did not want to go to the Naval Academy. Didn't know anything about it. Now, General Shea, 2-star General Shea, Roberta Shea, she was my battalion commander in 2008 on the drill field when I was a drill instructor. Okay. And I had just gotten to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri to be an instructor at my MOS school for motor transportation, a truck driver. Yep. And I'm super pumped to be down there. And like 5 months later, I get an email like, hey, have you ever thought about coming to the Naval Academy? I was like, absolutely not. What is this? No. Hard pass, right? Yep. And then I'm thinking, well, man, there's got to be a reason why she's reaching out to me. You know, sure. And that's assistant Marine officer instructor duty, very high vis duty for enlisted Marines to go on. And I knew one of my best friends was up there, now First Sergeant Nadia Sinsing. And she had 21st Company. And I'm thinking in my head, man, there's a reason why she's reaching out to me. Well, all in all, my orders were cut short down at instructor duty down there at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. I ended up being there for 2 years and moved straight up to the Naval Academy in 2015. Okay. March, April timeframe of 2015. And I stayed there until 2018. And I ended up being the brigade drill master and 6th Company senior enlisted leader. I will tell you, Grant, and everyone on watching this, hands down, the second most rewarding thing I ever did in my life. To be a part of the transformation from a young man or a young woman to understand the skills of the military aspect and just life in general and help them into molding and shaping them into officers to serve in the naval forces is phenomenal.
I appreciate you saying that. The reason I asked you to be on this with me is because of the impact you had on me specifically, right? And so I just want to give a genuine thank you to you from me and all of my classmates and all the people at the Naval Academy who you just made an extremely positive impact on all of our lives and our development. As like you're saying, I think the military in general but especially, again, the service academy path for a lot of people is the most expedited route to growing up, right? Your development from turning into from a high school kid into an adult happens really quickly through the military, and it happens because of the pressure of the place, but also the investment of all of the individuals and staff that are there to teach you, coach you, mentor you, push you, and help you develop, right? And so
Right.
I appreciate you coming on to do this, and I appreciate you for everything you did for me. And we'll kind of get into some of these stories of how we interacted and how we crossed paths at the academy. Before we do that, you mentioned that you were the brigade drill master. Was that part of your orders? Like when you got orders to the Naval Academy, did you know you were going to be the brigade drill master, or was like, hey, I'm going to be a senior enlisted leader, and then I kind of got this collateral as the brigade drill master?
Yeah, no, I knew I was going to get it. And I think that's
Okay.
a reason why General Shea pulled me up there. Then Colonel
Sure.
Shea, the deputy commandant, pulled me up
Mhm.
there. In fact, I I took that gig and I was all about it, but I needed something more because I have a lot of energy. Like I need
Mhm.
more to do. And I knew I could take on the role of a senior enlisted leader in a company. So I was able to talk my way into that and manage both of them, I think, fairly well. And I loved every second of it. I mean,
Yeah.
exhausting long hours, but totally worth it. The impact, and I think you brought up a good point of like maybe how I impacted you guys and all that, which is great, right? There's thousands of you throughout the Navy and the Marine Corps now that like are my brothers and sisters. They check on me every day. Like I run into them everywhere. It's phenomenal. But the impact that you guys had on me, I don't think I'll ever be able to express on how heartfelt it was. You guys changed me. Like it's not just like me helping you guys. Like we were a team and like we just jived and it just worked. And I loved every
Mhm.
second of it.
I love it. And how'd you get into being a drill instructor in the first place? Like you kind of mentioned that was your pathway up and through. How'd you end up becoming a drill instructor? Is that something you sought out, or you like it just happened and then you just loved it?
Yeah, well, I just came back from my third deployment, second combat deployment, and I had
Mhm.
reenlisted. And my mentor then was Gunnery Sergeant Troy Bell. He's now long retired. Him and his wife. His wife was a sergeant
Mhm.
major. He was a first sergeant when he retired. He lives up in Delaware. And I remember him saying to me, like, "Why don't you just try 4 more years?" Now, mind you, we're in on a deployment in Iraq in combat, and I'm like, "There's no way. I'm doing 4 years. I was a sergeant. I'm getting out. Like that's it."
Done. Yeah.
And he was so moto, and he's someone I always looked up to and wanted to be like. And I was like, you know what? Why not? Give it a shot. So back
Mhm.
then you could re-enlist and get an incentive and basically go wherever, within reasons you wanted to go. So I said,
Sure.
screw it. I'll re-enlist. And I re-enlisted with orders to the drill field. So I came back from that deployment, went straight to sergeant school, did some more training, and then shipped right to Parris Island, South Carolina. And I will tell you this, I was 22 years old. I had just got my first hash mark for service in the Marine Corps, and
Mhm.
I had no clue what I was doing, but I remember what my drill instructors did and instilled in me.
Mhm.
And once it clicks, and then you understand you're part of the process to make United States Marines be part of a team that these now men and women are going to go in to harm's way and fight for our country. There's no greater feeling than that.
Yeah.
And that's
I
the
love
same
that.
feeling I got at the Naval Academy for you guys. Because the moment you graduated, some of you guys went straight to combat on a ship or on land or
Mhm.
wherever,
Yep.
and still to this day, some didn't come home.
Mhm.
I mean, I don't think we understand when we're into it. And you guys as students when you're there, and then young recruits at the depot, they don't understand, like, man, when you graduate, this is life. This is serious. Like you can deploy at any moment. And there's
Mhm.
a great feeling of sense of pride and passion in me to be part of that process.
100%. It's fast how, or it's crazy how fast reality hits you in that perspective.
Mhm.
I guess you kind of assume when you graduate, oh, I'm going to go through the schooling pipeline. I'm going to get training out in the fleet for my specific job. Like you're saying, I was on deployment about 7 months after graduation. I was on deployment and like out and doing the thing. Right. And it's crazy how fast it hits you. And again, this is just the reality of the Naval Academy experience and the military experience in general. Is like, we're going to train you, but then you have to go out and execute. And a lot of it's just
Absolutely.
gonna a lot of the learning is gonna happen while you're out there and doing it, but it's crazy. It's crazy. And I think part of the foundation of a lot of the baseline building of all of what we're doing at these military institutions, and again, we'll focus this one a little bit on the Naval Academy here, is this idea of drill. And so kind of
Mhm.
the big reason I wanted to bring you on today is again, was your role as the brigade drill master. And for a person listening, a parent, a grandparent, no military background, has no idea about really anything military and especially drill, do you mind telling them about what drill is? What drill is and what the
Yeah,
purpose of drill is in the military indoctrination process?
absolutely. I'll start off by saying something sort of funny at first, like
Yeah.
no one really likes drill, right? I mean, I didn't like it as a recruit. I didn't like it as a drill instructor, but I
Mhm.
will tell you what, so much discipline and confidence in command and demand comes from drill. If you think
Mhm.
about years ago, I'm talking years and years, 1700s, 1600s, 1800s, and how, men formed in a line, which is drill and discipline to defeat the enemy. We still do
Mhm.
that to this day. It's just a little bit different, right? I'll start off by telling you the 5 purposes of drill and why every branch, it's a little bit different. Every branch has its own flavor, but why we do it, right? So I'm going to read off my paper right now. So the
Love
five
it.
purposes of close order drill. Number one is to move a unit from point A to point B in a disciplined manner, right? We don't just want people to gaggle around and look all undisciplined. If we're in the military, we got to be disciplined. You know what I mean?
Right.
Right? And two, to provide simple formations from which combat formations may be readily assumed. That one's huge. And I
Mhm.
don't think a lot of parents understand that to this day. Like if we instill drill at a young age to an officer
Mhm.
enlisted, those movements coincide with combat or on a ship or on land. Like in the air, we use formations in the air for pilots. Like it all boils down and it's basic drill is what it is. Number three,
Mhm.
to teach discipline by instilling habits of precision and automatic response to orders. Now, this right here is more so the instant willing obedience to all orders, right?
Yep.
The definition of what discipline is: respect for authority, self-reliance, and teamwork, right? And I think in order to sort of take that civilian-ish persona off a man or a woman, a young man or a young woman, whether that be at the Naval Academy or in at the depot somewhere, that's what we do. And that's sort of how we remove, hey, let's get rid of the civilian side of Beth Abbott and let's put her in the Marine Corps side of let's just learn her and grow her. And that's sort of what it is, right? And number four, to increase confidence in junior officers and non-commissioned officers through the exercise of command by giving of proper commands and by the control of drilling troops, right? And this is what I talk about that confidence of command and demand, right? You don't have to know everything, but if you can call your unit to attention, command them as a leader, and move them from point A to point B, you're well ahead of most people that, just don't have the confidence to even speak in front of young men and women. And
Mhm.
number five, it gives troops an opportunity to handle individual weapons and instill confidence, right? So just like the plebes, every time they do drill, they're assigned a rifle, right?
Yep.
Every time they're at the recruit depot, I mean, they're assigned a rifle. Anywhere you go, OCS, TBS, you're assigned a rifle, and it's your battle buddy for life because it will be your battle buddy in combat, right?
Mhm.
And just getting familiar with that, knowing the ins and outs of it, and instilling that confidence in you and just understanding about that. And I
Yeah.
think at the Naval Academy, we just put a different little spin and a different flavor on it to get the midshipmen to buy in on it.
100%. And you know what's so what's so funny to this day is you're talking about building confidence and having a structure, organization, and discipline. I remember one of the first things you said to me. So our main connection here, especially on the drill front, is as I was getting ready to be the regimental commander of Plebe Summer for the incoming class. There are a lot of times where I was going to have to be presenting in front of crowds at
Mhm.
formations, yelling, presenting these commands, using the sword manual, all the above. So, so Beth and I worked together. We worked together, and I remember the first thing you said to me is you were like, "Hey, sir, you walk with too much swag, and that's not a compliment." And I was just like, what are you talking about?" She's like, you're just so loose. You're just like kind of like flowing, like going with the flow. She's like, "I need you to tighten up right now." Right now. And I was like, "Oh, yeah, all right. Yeah, no, like you got it." You got it. And so that is again, like those are the 5 purposes of drill that we're talking about. And I do legitimately believe, especially that fourth one about, junior officers and like getting that experience of giving
Mhm.
commands and having that command authority and that command presence. That was a huge development in just my own personal life, was being in that regimental commander
Mhm.
position and having to give orders and give commands and do it to 1,200 people out there in front of everyone watching parades, watching the new meal formation, etc. Right. And so there's a big foundation there, which is really interesting. And you mentioned kind of like a little bit of the history of drill, like going all the way back. Is there a specific history? Do you know that they've kind of associated like, hey, at this point in time, like our ceremonial drill that we do in the United States military today can be traced back to a certain period, and how has it developed over time?
I mean, I don't know that off the top of my head. I should have done that
Sure.
research, but I will tell you this: a great starting point, I would believe, is from when the Marine Corps was founded in 1775, and
Yep.
what we did in the Revolutionary War and the Civil War, and then on up. And I think where I always compare where our drill is the best is Marine Barracks, Washington, 8th and I. And talk about drill and precision, like that is them. I mean, and that's for looks and for show now, but back then it wasn't. It was for combat. And not to say that obviously the Naval Academy doesn't we don't do that and we don't have to do that, but man, the foundation that the Naval Academy sets with whatever drill master and senior enlisted leaders, Navy or Marine Corps, that are there, that buys into the importance of it, I think it really matters. And I would say for my time, I'm sort of going around in a circle here. I think for my time when I was there, I was thankful to have SELs and company officers of all grade, of all rank, buy into drill, even though they might not have liked it. Maybe I didn't like coming in at 5:30 in the morning and doing plebe summer drill at 6 a.m. Like, who wants to do that? But I knew if I could motivate those plebes and make them happy and motivate them, then maybe their day is set, for the next event, right? It's like a midshipman going to math class. Do they really like math? Probably not. But guess what? I got to get it in order to complete my matrix to graduate, right? Like, just put your effort and focus into what you're doing. Like I say, be where you are 100%. Because there was times, Grant, and you guys probably seen it on my face. Maybe you didn't. Maybe I hit it well. I mean, I'd leave my house every morning at 4:15 just to make it to the Naval Academy on time because I lived in Alexandria, Virginia. But the pride in me to go there, to know if I impacted one midshipman once a day, one, and it doesn't have to be about drill, it could be about anything, then I did my job as a leader. That's what kept me coming back for more and fiending it. And then for some reason, me and the brigade just clicked when I started this whole drill master thing. And once I understood the buy-in and how to get to a midshipman, man, the connection was phenomenal. And I think I was happy. I was blessed of the performance that the midshipmen gave, not just me, not just the discipline they put forth, but the public. The public loved it, loved coming into parades, couldn't wait for a football march on. I mean, the publicity was unreal.
Yeah.
And that's a testament to you guys and the mids that were there.
Well, 100%. And I appreciate you giving us a little bit of the credit. It's an infectious positivity that you brought to it, right? Like, again, and it just speaks to leadership in general. And I think a big thing about military leadership, and I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on it. But again, a lot of military leadership is getting people to buy into doing things that they don't want to do, that they don't have any like proactive desire to do if it weren't for the fact that we have to do it as a unit or as an organization or as an entity or whatever the case is. Right. And so again, you brought a certain level of positivity and an infectious personality that just like made it worth it. Right. It just made it, we're like, no, look, hey, Gunny's here and we're going to do it. Like Gunny Abbott's here and we're like, this is what it's going to be. And so I really appreciate that. And you had mentioned that you had some, company officers and senior enlisted leaders helping you out as well. Did you have a midshipman staff as well, like any midshipman brigade drill master or type of people that you used as well to kind of help educate the brigade of midshipmen, again, to get ready as detailers where they were going to be teaching drill?
Yeah, absolutely. So there was, my counterpart to me, the midshipman drill officer, and then each regiment had the regimental drill officer all the way down to the companies and the platoons and the squads. Like, it was phenomenal. And getting that cadre to buy off on drill, and most of them volunteered for that position because they liked drill, made my life way easier because then, it's not just me, just speaking to thousands of midshipmen trying to get them to buy off on this thing that most of them do not like. We can sort of help each other out. And that drill staff really helped me out, and then when it comes to Plebe Summer and the detailers, I mean, those positions are phenomenal in itself, not just, for the leadership role, but for the development, for the personal and professional development. But they have no choice but to do drill. There's no getting around it.
Yep. And did you was there ever a training pipeline for once the midshipmen found out they were going to be detailers, like, hey, I'm going to be a platoon commander for this Plebe Summer. Was there a plebe summer drill training period that you went through, or kind of how was that handled for the incoming detailers?
Yeah, absolutely. And I can't remember the exact verbiage of what it was, but I will tell you
Sure.
this. I think because of the bond and the relationship myself and the brigade had, whoever
Mhm.
were the incoming detailers, I mean, they sought me out because they cared about what they, not in a conceited way, what they looked like, how they wanted to be, who they wanted
Mhm.
to be, the professionalism, the discipline. They wanted to be that role model that those plebes looked up to, knowing that they're still learning, but knowing that in a year they're going out to the fleet and they're actually going to do the real thing. And yeah, there was the whole transition period of how we would train the detailers to make sure they are ready for that incoming, plebe summer. And
Yep.
that was for me, that was probably the funnest moment. That was the funnest part,
Yeah.
was
Fun,
that.
fun for me too. I don't know if you remember this when you talk about
Yeah.
kind of in that similar vein to that first training that we had. So when I found out I was going to be the reg commander, I went to you and I was like, I need help. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing.
Mhm.
And like you're saying, again, there's going to be, I wanted to take my job very seriously and I wanted to take my role very seriously. And I knew that like during parades, during formations, I was going to be in front of potentially thousands of people like watching all of this happen. Right. And I
Mhm.
wanted to be sharp. And I remember the first thing you did is you had me, because again, a big piece of that when you're commanding a unit of 1,200 plebes and another 250 detailers, it's like you're covering a lot of space. You're gonna have to give commands to 1,500 people over a loud space
Mhm.
in this drill ceremony and parade. I remember you had me yelling at trees in Smoke Park. You're like, all right, well, we're going to work on how you actually yell and give commands. And you're like, right now you're screaming out of your throat and you sound like a dying crow. It was like, I need you to go into your diaphragm and start like actually like giving these commands. And I just think it was, so cool, but also a funny story to go back and remember all my time and be like, I was standing out there, literally like you're saying, at like 6:30 in the morning, standing in Smoke Park, literally screaming, yelling at trees, giving commands to trees. But
Yeah.
like that's what you have to do. Like that's what you have to do in order to be ready to go for, again, actually leading a formation or leading a parade or leading whatever it is. And it
Yeah.
takes work. It just takes
I
a little
think that's very
practice, right?
important. Yeah, I mean, that's how I learned. That's how we learned. I mean, not all the time, but at drill instructor school, we yell at trees, we yell at anything. And I think
Mhm.
it's not just to make our diaphragm better and make us louder. There's a humility piece to it,
Mhm.
meaning be confident when you're right and be confident when you're wrong. It doesn't matter what you're commanding and demanding. If you're confident, they will move with precision every time,
Mhm.
right? Like it's phenomenal, the discipline aspect of it. And I want to share a story real quick. I can't remember
Yeah.
if I think it was the class of 19. It might have been 18. I remember plebe summer starting. And so we're started plebe summer, the boot camp, if you will, portion of it. And I remember, and I'll leave his name out, a senior officer. Well, first it was Colonel Shea saying,
Sure.
Gunny, why don't you teach fixed bayonet? And I'm
Mhm.
like, fixed bayonet to not just the plebes, but to like 3,000 midshipmen? No way. Like, how am I going to do that? I'm not eighth and I. But then I'm thinking, in my head, I'm thinking, you're Beth Abbott. You can teach this. You can
Why not?
figure it out. And she goes, why don't you do that? And then I know when, General Shea speaks to me, I'm like, all right, I got this. I'm going to do it. Right. Like, so I'm thinking, man, how am I going to do this? And then there was another senior officer that said, I mean, he was disgusted. He's like, you're never going to be able to do that. Never. And I was like,
Oh,
challenge
now
accepted,
now
right?
I got
Like,
to.
watch this, right? So I remember bringing the plebes into T court. It was one evening, the sun was setting. It was a perfect evening. It was amazing. And I'm standing up on the steps, and the plebes are below me with all their SELs and company officers behind them. And I'm teaching them what I made up the ditties to be, fixed bayonet. And I still remember it to this day. I won't go through it, but I remember watching video after video after video, getting the
Mhm.
help from my drill officers saying, can we do this? They're like, yeah, we can do this. All right, here's how I'm going to do it. I'm going to say the ditties. I'm going to do it. Does this look right? Blah, blah, blah. It didn't look like eighth and I, but
Mhm.
it looked pretty good.
Yeah.
And then the plebes are thinking, there's no way I can do this. Right. So we're in T court and we're going back and forth, and we're doing it with the bayonets. And I keep
Yeah.
saying, don't put your rifle and your bayonet underneath your face. It's got to go to the side. Like, there's a
Mhm.
reason, right? You'll stab yourself. And we're going through all this stuff. And I'm laughing right now. It was funny then. It's still funny to me. Thank God he's okay. This plebe, we're going through fixed bayonet. This plebe puts his bayonet through his cheek, right?
Oh,
And he has so much discipline and pride. He's looking at me and he's like, Gunner Sergeant, and I'm like, and in the moment, I'm like, I don't care. Go see your senior enlisted leader. Like, go to the back. This kid was so disciplined. He like went to attention, said, yes, Gunner Sergeant, blood gushing from his face, pulls the bayonet from his face. And in that moment, I got chills talking about it. It motivated the crap out of me. But then the plebes all seen it and they got so excited. And I was like, that's how it's done. And I made a training lesson out of that. And it was so moto. But guess what we got right that night? We got fixed bayonet right that night. It was the coolest thing ever.
Yeah.
Right.
Just
And then I
casualty
remember
of one plebe's
when the
cheek.
plebes,
That's it.
there we go. Right. It's sad, but he's probably fine now. Maybe a little bit of a scar. But I remember the plebes getting introduced to the brigade on their first parade when everyone comes back for school.
Yep.
And we did fixed bayonet. And in the stands, the brigade is cheering and they're like, oh my God, what is this? And how important it was to the plebes to show the brigade that they could do that. It was the coolest thing ever. And then I had the challenge of teaching the entire brigade fixed bayonet. That was rough, but we got it.
That's a whole nother level, because again, for anyone who's listening, as you will soon discover, you have max level buy-in during Plebe Summer, right? Like you will get max level buy-in during Plebe Summer. When you get to when you get to the school year and you got a second class or a youngster, getting buy-in is just a little bit harder. It's just a little bit harder at times, especially for something like that. So yeah, I'm sure that was quite the challenge. Quite the challenge to get it ready.
It was, but man, it was good. Parades. It was good. Yeah.
Amazing. Well,
what I will tell you though is that I think something you touched on was like, and for anyone, for the parents that are listening too, like, and this goes human being to human being, right? It's one thing to be motivated. You can motivate anyone and they'll probably follow you or get excited and blah, blah, blah. But if you truly inspire them to want to do something that they didn't think they could do or didn't want to do, and then they do it and you see the pride and the confidence in themselves, like that's all it's about. And that's what I try to do every day. And if it's infectious, if you get through to one, you can get through to many. And I think that's why the buy-in was there. Like the mids were phenomenal. Like it was great.
I love that. So many parallels. Again, I think this is what I want to touch on as we transition it back to like the focus of drill during Plebe Summer. There's so many parallels. There's so many parallels to life and just general leadership that can be taught through the foundations of drill and the impact that it has, right? As we talk about the purposes of drill, it parallels to so many different things. And so as a result, basically every evening during Plebe Summer, there is a drill period, right? So after the evening meal, you get ready to go out to the drill field where you have like an hour and a half for dedicated drill instruction, education, and practice. And so I just wanted to pick your brain and see, when it came to Plebe Summer, what were your goals and vision for those instruction periods? And how were you communicating to the detail staff of like, we need to practice X, Y, or Z, or kind of how structured or formatted was it versus letting the detailers kind of teach it on their own?
Yeah, great question. I think, first and foremost, Warden Field is like historical. I mean, so many men and women heroes have walked on that field. And I get chills every time I drive past it or walk on it still to this day. So just Warden Field is phenomenal. So going out there after, like, no one wants to do drill after you eat evening chow. You're tired, you're worn down, but we go out there until the sun goes down. And something I think I always wanted to instill in the detailers and to instill in myself as well is, can we learn at least one thing? I'd always give them a handful, like 3 or 4 things, like focus on these 3 or 4 things for an hour and a half, hit it and move on, hit it and move on. But in the same sense, the detailers are working on their command and demand, their command presence as well. So they're working, but teaching the plebes, can we teach them at least one thing every drill period that's something new, that it'll instill confidence and they'll be like, oh, I learned something new today. I would say for the most part, we accomplished that almost every drill period. And once we got all those pockets of, I'm going to teach X, Y, and Z today and a little bit of this today and this. And then when I thought, well, man, I'd get the input of my drill officers, the staff, and then I'd get the input of the senior enlisted leaders and the Plebe Summer officers and all that. And I'd say, hey, are we ready? Are we,
Mm-hmm.
are we ready to bring them all together and teach them the
Yep.
sequence of a parade?
Mm-hmm.
Because if they know the movements, the simple little movements of the rifle and then right face, left face, and marching, you know, and eyes right, we can do anything.
Mm-hmm.
All they have to do is follow in suit, and once we sort of put it all together and we're like, all right, this is what it looks like, and I can command and demand from my microphone. Really, the detailers, the Plebe Summer details did it all. I just said
Mm-hmm.
stop or go or get back or let's do it again. And you guys had it. I mean, that's the best part. If I could train you guys to understand the importance of that, of the little stuff
Mm-hmm.
that we, broke out in our little groups on the Warden field, and then we put it together, that's the masterpiece right there.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And even you hearing you say get back, it made me like laugh and just bring back so many memories because like during plebe summer, like you're saying, you have that microphone, right? And I remember being a plebe and the same thing,
Mhm.
and it's just like they would give a command, you do a movement, like there'd be something of like, for example, like the manual of arms or something like that. We're kind of moving the rifle around, and I just remember I forget who the gunny was. Who was the brigade drill master before you? Do you remember who you took over for?
Gosh, I can see his face. I can't say his name.
Yeah, I can't remember his name for the life
I
of
don't
me
remember.
either. But he was so
Yeah.
funny. He get it back right now. And it's just like you hear all
Yep.
1,200 plebes just go, I gotta research it, like put it back. And like it just, if
Yeah.
you ever drive past Warden Field during plebe summer in the evening, you will see just a whole like 1,200 plebes just yelling some type of response and just like gunnery sergeant. Like those were some words that just stick to my brain here to this day. And as we talk about
Yeah.
some of the movements that they're practicing, again, we're not going to go in depth about like drill here, but some of the things that we're working on during that plebe summer drill period, like you mentioned, are marching movements. The actual, like you said,
Mhm.
eyes right. Do you mind explaining very briefly when you say eyes right, like what are people expecting to see from plebes in that command?
Yeah, I'm probably going to butcher this, but I'll first we'll talk about marching manual. So
Yeah.
if I'm right with all of this, we start at right shoulder arms from right to left, left to port, port to right. And when we do eyes right, we ended up in our, and I think I said that backwards. We ended up in our right shoulder arms. So when we do eyes right, it's basically the troops saying, basically in a sense, saying to the commander or saying to the reviewing officer,
Mhm.
the man or woman that's going to lead them into combat, for lack of better terms in
Yep.
history. Hey, we're ready to go. Look at us, we're ready to go. And we're going to salute you when we march by. So they're all in formation, they march by, they do an eyes right, there's got the rifles, they're saying, hey, we're ready to go. And the
Mhm.
detailer in the front is commanding them in all of this, and when we're sort of giving them a salute, and he's saying to that reviewing officer, hey, we're ready to go. Right. And
Yep.
that's what the plebes are, whatever rank they are at the time, or the midshipmen are saying
Yep.
when they're going. It's very, I mean, it gives me chills saying that. As much as, drill sometimes frustrates me, it is,
Mhm.
you boil it back down to history, and it's huge. It's saying, all right, we're ready to go. Look at us. Look what we've been trained and taught to do. We're
Yep.
ready to follow you into combat, period. And
Yep.
that's what it's all about.
Good. I love it.
Yeah.
It's
It's
what it's
huge.
all about. It's what it's all
I love it.
about.
Yeah.
And so yeah, so that's kind of
Absolutely.
that's the premise of plebe summer drill, right? Is during that drill period you're going through and you're practicing all of the individual movements, from marching movements to the actual rifle movements to eyes right, which is the salute to the reviewing party. You're going through all those things. So by the end of, not even by the end of the summer, but throughout the summer, you're able to execute a formal parade, right? And we'll actually do a follow-on episode and follow-on content about the formal parade, and when you come to watch it, what you're actually looking at and what it means. But that's what's going on during that evening drill practice. And like Beth was saying, it's really hard because I think you really need to, like you're saying, take away one thing to focus on. Because I just remember being a plebe during that plebe like drill period. Like you're saying, it's after evening chow. The Annapolis sunset's there. It's still hot. You hear the cicadas just like buzzing and chirping in the background.
Mhm.
And I remember there are so many times where like, because it also, Warden Field is also in the flight path of BWI. So you just see planes flying over all the time. And I
Yeah.
just remember being a plebe and just being like, man, what I would give to be on one of those planes right now and just let me just go home for a minute. Like that'd be sweet. So It's tough.
Yeah.
It's tough to keep attention during those drill periods at times because people are just exhausted, and it's just kind of like that end of day wind down. But that is the purpose. That's the purpose of that drill period at the end of the day, is to get people ready for those formal parades, And so
Yeah.
the last thing that I want to touch on in terms of plebe summer drill is that there's actually a drill competition. Each platoon competes in a
Hmm.
drill competition towards the end of plebe summer. You mind talking about or sharing some stories of things that you remember from your time as the brigade drill master, and what either the purpose of the competition was, or like how it was structured, organized, and what people did in that competition?
Yeah. Absolutely. So it was my way to evaluate the plebes, what the plebes have learned, whether that
Mhm.
be from me or more specifically from their detailer. And it was a way for me to evaluate, because they get graded as well. The platoon commander gets graded, right?
Yep.
And then we rack and stack them. And this is the same thing at Recruit Depot West, Recruit Depot East, and OCS. And they don't do it at TBS, but OCS, right? It's always a competition. Who can drill the best? What instructor's the best? Meaning what platoon
Mhm.
commander for what we're talking about at the Naval Academy, which platoon commander is the best? Meaning who can command and can demand? Who learned drill the most? Who can get their plebes to do precision and discipline and rifle manual and movements? So yeah, we had a huge competition. It was usually on a Saturday and Sunday. It started at like 8 in the morning, I think, and ran until about 5 p.m. And they were long days, but it was platoon after platoon after platoon, and I loved every second of it. And it was just so much fun, because it was almost like the mom heart in me, or the big sister heart in me, saying, the leader in me saying, man, he or she learned something, check that out. And I get to watch them, and now I'm grading them too. Or I
Mhm.
look at that plebe that didn't know his or her left from their right, and they're like, I've never touched a gun in my life, and I can't do this, and I can't. And then the tears and all this frustration, to look at that young man or woman and say, man, look what you just did,
Yeah.
or your platoon won, right? And then whatever prize we gave them, they got something. I can't remember what it was, but it's just, and amongst the detailers, I think, as much as a competition as it is to talk crap, for lack of better words, for the plebes in their platoons, it's more so the detailers that is a crap talking, and I always got them together,
Oh,
and I
big
got
time.
the top three. I think I got the top three gifts out of my own pocket, just because it was great. And then we probably shared a beverage or something together. Like, it was phenomenal. Like, the competition was great, but the buy-in, if you get the buy-in and you inspire them to compete, most of us by human nature are competitive. That's what we want to do. But if you sell it that way, man, they buy off on it, and it's great.
1000%.
Yeah.
That is something I was talking with, my good friend Christian Blanchard. He was the platoon commander, 26th platoon, as our time of detailers, and he was just recollecting, like, again, he was so motivated to be have the best drill platoon, right? Like
Absolutely.
that was it. And like you're saying, it turned into a competition, it turned into an inspiration, and it turned into a real, almost like tangible leadership challenge. Because I think this is a really interesting distinction from a lot of the
Yes.
stuff that goes on during plebe summer. Is, again, you do a lot of the same stuff over and over again in the military boot camp and indoctrination process, and you can see progression, but it's like, how do we really quantify what's happened? Whereas in this drill competition,
Hmm.
for the first time, like, under your leadership, under your command, you have a tangible result of like something that you are trying to execute at an extremely high level, and you're competing against all of the other platoons in a way that will be evaluated, right? And so I think it's a
Yeah.
really cool
Absolutely.
concept for pride that the plebes have, but also the pride that the detailers
Mhm.
have to really do well and to execute and have that, like you're saying, that true sense of competition amidst this military indoctrination process. It's a cool
Yeah.
aspect.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's what it's about. And it was fun. I will tell you what, the competition at the end, phenomenal. Because the senior enlisted leaders come out to watch, the company
Mhm.
officers come out to watch. Some of the mids that are on the yard come out to watch from the brigade. Like, it's just fun. And it's in Doggart
Yeah.
Hall. If it's usually hot, so we have to go inside. It's phenomenal.
Yeah. And how, at a very high level, how do you evaluate something like that? Do you have a grade sheet or a card that you're like evaluating certain movements, or command giving? Like, what things are you actually looking at when those drill competitions are going on?
Yeah, I have I used when I was a drill instructor at Paris Island, I just used whatever year. So like I got there in 15, so 16 when I
Mhm.
did it for that summer, or 17, I contacted my buddies back at Paris Island and had them give me all their, unit leader scorecards, and then their, which card you're going to get, because each card is different, 1 through 6, and then you have indoor 1 through 10, whatever it is, right? So yeah, there's a whole checklist. And what's great though is I give them to the unit leaders, to platoon commanders, a week in advance. So you know what you're going to get graded on. You can, basically HB it all, heavy barrel it all, right? Like prepare yourself, and you can tell the plebes, hey, this is what, Gunny Abbott's going to be looking at for. This is what the inspectors are looking at,
Mhm.
your uniform's got to be clean. You're disciplined. Are you shaved? Is the female's hair good to go? Is, your boot shined? Like every little detail, right? And then your rifle being cleaned, everything. And it
Mhm.
goes in line in detail. So those are the score
Mhm.
sheets that, they get up front. And it gives them a sense of pride too. Like, oh, all right, now I know the why, and I know what I'm getting graded on. Okay, we can do this. Right.
Yep.
It gives them a more sense of pride and belonging.
100%. 100%. So thank you for taking the time to to explain all of this to us, and again, give people a high level. I think drill is one of those things for people with zero military background whatsoever. Like, trying to comprehend what's going on is really confusing. So I appreciate you taking the time to help explain, at least again, the purpose of it and generally what's going on during Plebe Summer, to help them understand. And as we get ready to wrap this up, kind of the theme that I've wanted to bring back into Academy Insider is, again, understanding this idea that leadership matters, right? Leadership matters, but that you should never underestimate the impact you can make on someone, and how, quote unquote, like easy leadership could be with simple actions, right? Like simple actions, and how much that
Mhm.
impacts people. And so I just wanted to turn this over to you, if you had any stories or recollections on someone who made your Naval Academy journey or experience better, and just give you an opportunity to give a shout out and just talk about, someone who was special and made a really positive impact on you during your time in it.
Yeah, I will say there's many stories, but two that stand out right now. I remember, just me being a brand new gunnery sergeant. I was still, very quick off the mouth. Things used to bother me. Seeing a mid walking and chewing gum, their uniform jacked up, I just wanted to yell and scream. Like that was my thing. I'm like, why? Like, you're getting free college. Like, why can't you just abide by the rules and regs? But like, then I look at myself. Why can't I just abide by the rules and regs? Like, there was so much stuff, right? Like,
Mhm.
and I remember then Colonel Shea pulling me and Nadia Sensing, First Sergeant Sensing now, aside and saying, "Hey, they're a little bit different here. I mean, she was Academy 1991, I believe,
Mhm.
grad. A little bit different here. Just give them a 5-minute correction." And I'm like, "What do you mean by that?" And I got 5 minutes to correct a mid on saying, "Get the gum out of your mouth." Like I'm just a hot-headed a-hole, right? Um, But then she explained it in detail. And like if you want to correct a midshipman, and I use this in life now, and it's, oh my gosh, it's worked tenfold. Just give them a 5-minute correction, meaning get down to their level. Tell them why it's wrong, what they're doing. Maybe tell them the instruction where they can look it up, and then tell them the higher purpose of why, it might look bad or it might be wrong. And then it's a conversation you can ask them about themselves, their families, like anything, right? So that's one
Mhm.
lesson that I think that was phenomenal there. And then I'm going to give a shout out to Star Steele. I don't know if you remember her.
I
Midshipman
don't.
Star Steele. Do you remember her?
Uh-uh.
No.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
I'll never No, it's fine. I'll never forget. She was a pilot. She's out
Mhm.
now. She married Andrew Ah. Um,
Oh,
so and I wanted to say her name because this moment meant so much to me. We still talk to this day, and I tell her the story all the time. So
yeah.
I had messed up teaching. I don't know if it was plebe summer detail in the morning doing something, or if it was regular academic year drill, whatever it was. We were in T Court, and I used the word retarded, which is a horrible word to use, right? And I didn't think anything of it. I was like, I don't even know the context I used it. But I was so proud of her, because I've always told anyone I ever lead, if you have a problem with something I did, just as I do with anyone else, I will come to you like a grown man or a woman. I will address the issue with tact and professionalism, and we will work it out.
Mhm.
Most midshipmen we're scared, right? Because Gunnery Sergeant been in for a while, been to combat, don't want to do that, don't want to tell her she's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But again, the bond that I had with the brigade at the time and during those years were phenomenal. And I remember at the end of it, Star came up to me and she said, I don't appreciate that you used that word.
Mm-hmm.
My sister has Down syndrome. I've been around that word my whole life and it's not professional. I mean, she went on this whole thing and I'm like, I had like tears in my eyes, but I was so proud of her for coming up and telling me. And I was like, that's amazing. I never used that word since that day. Like it might slip up in like little things here and there, but like,
Sure.
I consciously do not use that word anymore. And the tact and professionalism that Star had that day was phenomenal. And I was like,
Yeah.
I'm so proud of you. Like, I'll never forget that moment.
Yeah. That's so cool. I love that. And I love that you put a mix of, again, both Colonel Shea, or I guess now General Shea, right? It comes from all levels of the Naval Academy. I think that's what makes the place also extremely cool, right? Is you could have a now 2-star providing you real insight in this life advice and leadership advice and insight. And then you have the impact of a midshipman, right? Just this high character, high bravery individual. Because again, I do really want to make this clear. As amazing as Beth is, gunnery sergeants are scary. I don't know how else to put it, but like they can be scary at times. So to like quite literally go up and say that, right? Like that takes some internal fortitude, right? To actually go up and to be motivated to act on that. So that's very cool, right? And I think at large, this episode has been a really great insight into the foundations of drill and everything of the sort. So I really appreciate you taking the time to explain some of this stuff to all of us. Beth, thank you so much for joining us today. I really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. If I can say one last thing, what I used to
Please.
say to the plebes, and they didn't really understand it. They didn't understand it. I'd say to the plebes in the brigade is drill is life and life is good. Right? Drill is life and life is good at that moment. And again, if you take that in anything you're doing in your life that maybe you don't want to do, if you say it's good, you buy into it, be where you are, life is good, right? It's all a mindset. It's perspective. It's your attitude and your effort towards everything. And that's what it's about.
Yeah. I love it. Well, thank you so much. Thanks for that amazing parting insight and advice. Appreciate you more than you'll ever know. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure we'll see you back here on Academy Insider at some point. So I appreciate you making this happen.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Grant. Take care.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Academy Insider podcast. I really hope you liked it, enjoyed it, and learned something during this time. If you did, please feel free to like and subscribe or leave a comment about the episode. We really appreciate to hear your feedback about everything and continue to make Academy Insider an amazing service that guides, serves, and supports midshipmen, future midshipmen, and their families. Thank you.